Hey guys, this is Brent here. Thank you so much for attending another quick interview we have a special guest speaker. His name is Mr. Wayne Meadows the third, and he's been crushing it in the industry so far where he's at in his business, and he's given us some time to go ahead and kind of answer a few questions of, how he became an entrepreneur, what are some of the challenges that he himself as an entrepreneur has experienced, so that hopefully many of you guys that are considering that going into 2021 or even just considering building your own business, what are some things that you need to look out for, right? So Wayne, thanks for being here, man. I am super stoked to have you here. Congratulations to all of your success. And, even during a pandemic, man, you've been crushing it. So congratulations to
Thank you.
everything.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's always an honor to be here, man. And obviously, I love adding value to your team as best I can.
Awesome. Well, look, Wayne, I'm going to ask you 10 questions, man. And, again, with these questions, you guys just take the nuggets, take the one or two nuggets here. And let's go in with the first one, Wayne. I mean, a lot of people watching this don't know you, right? Could you share a little bit about your story, your background? Were you always an entrepreneur? I mean, like, how did you get started to someone who's making a single six figure to making now eventually more than multi six figure income? Like, what's the story, man? How did you get into entrepreneurship?
Wow. Thanks for the question. Well, a little bit about myself. Grew up, born and raised Oakland, California, and kind of traditional. Grew up through private schooling and all that kind of stuff, but transitioned into the world of sales. In my late 20s, and got into the world of the auto industry, and kind of climbed the ranks there. Became what's called a general sales manager in the luxury auto world, and ran a dealership. Had about 85 employees, and so really had a lot of experience for over 12 years doing that. But what was always missing for me was the time aspect. I'm a father of three, my oldest being 20, my youngest being 9. And what you find about the traditional sales world is there's not a lot of time for family, and especially in the auto sales world, you're working weekends, you're working holidays. And over time, that starts to weigh on a family a little bit. Yes, it provided a great lifestyle, nice home, nice cars, all that kind of stuff, but very little time for that quality time with the family. And that's what I was after. And so a really good friend of mine through my church introduced me to the world of finance. And I really kind of latched on to one thing that he said to me. And he simply asked me the question, "Hey, are you married to the car business?" And I said, "Absolutely not. I am open-minded because I've got a wife." So that was what really kind of piqued my interest, because he knew about my lifestyle, and he also knew that I was time strapped a little bit.
Yeah.
And so that's what I was more interested in learning more about in entrepreneurship, which was how do I gain more of my life back in terms of flexibility of schedule and still have an income that could provide for our family. So that's what kind of brought me into the world of entrepreneurship.
That's awesome. And was this and the company you're in now? I mean, was that essentially like, hey, the first shot you got, it ended up you ended up staying committed to it and finding success, or have you had the chance to kind of do multiple businesses or try different ventures? Have you always been an entrepreneur ever since your friend had asked of you?
Great question. No, actually, I had multiple stints with other network marketing businesses
Okay.
many years ago. Started in my early 20s, introduced to companies like Amway, and I really got my start there in learning about this idea of networking, this idea of working for yourself and being your own boss, and the importance of personal development. So that happened for me, over 20 years ago, just
Wow.
getting that kind of mindset put in place. And I think that's what actually helped me in the sales world, because I applied a lot of those principles that I learned there to the traditional world of sales in the auto industry.
Wow.
And but what really helped me there, helped me scale there, yes, and it increased my income, yes. But now all of a sudden I was trading time for dollars. It was kind of against everything that I learned about entrepreneurship. And so when this opportunity came back to me, I was like, that's my ticket. That's what I was looking for.
Mm,
And that's really what ultimately would give us this lifestyle that we have today.
that's awesome. And I think that's a really big point, Wayne, because a lot of people when they see the entrepreneur or the guy that is crushing it in whatever time period they're in, a lot of them things like, man, it just happened, and it's never that. It
Yeah,
actually takes many, many years of planting that seed of saying, hey, I want to start thinking about that, because the mindset has to evolve through time. And I think just the right timing happened for every one of us, right? So
absolutely.
those of you who are having, even see from Wayne, this guy had a family already, had so many things going on, but had always considered, filling his mind up, personal development and growing. and then the timing became right with the right opportunity. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah. Let's talk about the next one, Wayne. I mean, we're getting nuggets here, man. Let's talk about number two here. And question number two is like, we talk about teaching moments. Okay. And you shared with us that there are stints of different companies, different experiences, sales. Let's talk about a teaching moment. What would you say was the biggest teaching moment? Because I don't want to call it a failure, but let's call it a teaching moment that could have derailed you from continuing the path of being an entrepreneur. What would you say that would be for you?
Wow. There's many of them. But if I had to pick out one that I recalled, um, probably, seeing my first stint in network marketing, seeing how we were able to develop a good sized team and see it all fall apart due to a lack of proper leadership.
Mm,
And that was a real big teaching moment for me. I learned something from one of my mentors many years ago that talks about the importance of shying away from building a business around what he called the star method,
mm,
meaning that if you build your business around one individual, that is a recipe for disaster over time because people tend to fail us over time.
mm,
And so what I learned from that experience was this importance, and what we're learning today is the importance of leadership replacement, the importance of not one individual star, but building a community of people that are all growing together and taking leadership in their own right. The importance of building a business that way versus, oh, we have this one individual that's going to take us to the promised land.
mm,
And so that for me was my biggest moment. Was I knew that, okay, seeing what happened to us in the past, I didn't want to repeat that. And so
mm.
now I have a big emphasis on making sure I build my people up to where I don't want to be seen as the star. I want to be seen as, we're helping influence a lot of people become stars.
Wow.
Because then it's not me that people are following. It's the idea, it's the camaraderie, it's the environment rather than the one individual. So that was probably my biggest teaching moment.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people, especially in business, when they fail first time or they have that teaching moment, they quit. They're just like, man, this was too painful. And I love what you said about having to take that lesson of losing a team or building something, whatever it is, a business, franchise, and it all falling apart. And instead of you just dwelling and feeling like, man, this is it, you still went ahead and tried different ventures to continue on that dream, but you've learned from those past mistakes. So I think
Absolutely.
that's a big thing here. I think this is going to really be big on the following question we got here in a little bit. But let's talk about something about impact. Wayne. And I see your name here, Wayne Meadows the third, right? So I'm going to kind of highlight here. Let me ask you: is there anyone in your family? Because a lot of people have a lot of family members when they start business, they don't understand. So essentially, they get a lot of what we call flack, right? They get a lot of crap from family members. Was there anyone particular in your family generation or lineage that actually helped you or became your biggest support as an early entrepreneur?
Two people,
Two people.
both. I'd probably say my dad and my grandfather first and
Ooh,
foremost. When it,
okay.
when it came to entrepreneurship, and a part of it started with my grandfather. I'm the third, so I'm named after both of them. But my grandfather really instilled this belief in us as kids that we needed to be people that brought honor to our family name.
Mm,
And did things to the best that we possibly could do it, right? And be the best at whatever we decided to do. And he always was supportive of whatever we chose. And so that always stuck with me. And then with my father, it was work ethic, right? The dude just flat out works hard. And I saw that obviously through my childhood and keeping that as, okay, if I take the somewhat perfectionism of my grandfather and then add my father's work ethic, I'm going to be great. And it
mm,
was never a mindset that I couldn't be because it was always instilled in the two examples that I saw. Does that make sense? And so
yeah.
that for me, like you can even see behind me, that's our family crest up there,
Wow.
the Meadows crest, and that was my grandfather's. And so that's why I keep it in view, because it reminds me when I see it that
Mm.
I have to focus on bringing honor to this name because that's what he instilled in us. So that'll probably be the biggest impact in terms of in our family.
Wow. So literally, family traditions being passed down is what really kind of and I think it's a powerful thing. A lot of people, and I think this is a beautiful thing, having to start from generations past, is a
Mhm.
lot of people don't realize that they can actually be the change for their family. Like if you don't have
Yeah,
a tradition or a lineage of that type of bringing honor to your family name, you could be the first,
that's
right?
it.
I think the cool thing, Wayne, is that your family, in a sense, had paved the way for you, right, to kind of point you in the right direction, so you can pick up where they left off and make
That's
that
it.
next generation even better. So man, I can see a lot of why you're growing so quickly, and the timing is everything, man. So let's talk about number 4 here, okay? So mentorship is one of those things that people are looking. We're either Googling, we're on YouTube, we're finding books, we're finding so many different mentors. Let me ask you, how important, in a sense, is mentorship when it comes to you building your business, right? Because you've had mentors from the past, and mentors today. How has that helped you in compared to not having a mentor at all?
Okay, mentorship is probably, if there's only two ways that you become successful, it's mentorship is one, and the marketable idea is the second, right?
Mhm.
Platform. Uh, it's a winning ingredient, and for me personally, it's been everything for our business, especially as of late. We've seen a massive amount of growth because of, well, our personal mentor, a guy named Hermie Bacchus, as you know,
Mhm.
who has personally taken upon himself. Here's someone who's earning well over $2 million a year income, who is coaching people for free 5 days a week for an hour a day. That's not normal, right? Let's
Yeah.
just put that out there. We have all the social media gurus and all that kind of stuff who are going to sell us a multi-$100 kit to learn from them. And you have someone who's a servant leader that's willing to give his time and energy and information at no charge. And so what really affected our business in particular was I didn't just want to learn from him. I wanted to get as many of my teammates as possible around him.
Mm.
Because first and foremost, if you have a mentor that's willing to give you their time, that's a game changer. Because that's I think is one of the biggest things that our world is missing is somebody that is not only someone who's gone before us, but who's gone before us in the thing that we're pursuing,
Mm.
right? Because we can have mentorship in lots of different ways, right? Whether it be in our marriage, whether it be in our faith, whether it be in our finances. But if we're looking to learn from somebody in particular business, are they mentoring us in a business that they've built themselves?
Mm.
Right, versus somebody who's successful because they're selling this marketable idea, or they're selling this book. Well, I love what our mentor Jack Wu always says. Are they successful because we bought their book, or because they were successful before they wrote the book?
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
And so that's why I really look at mentorship differently, because we've been blessed with having servant leader mentors. That's a big difference.
Mm.
You could have mentors and you never even speak to them.
Right.
Right, but
Yeah.
to have a mentor that actually is willing to pour that time and energy into you, that's a very different thing. And I don't take that for granted that we have that. But it's crucial. It's crucial. If someone can find that, you got to hold on to it, because
Mm.
it is not something that's commonplace in the community and in the business world. It's just not.
So you recommend that no matter what, if you can find a mentor, you're gonna not only one, you want to hold on to them, but you want to, especially if you're in the team building business, you want to have as much people to also learn from them, because they're not going to be around forever, right?
Exactly.
And to learn
That's
that,
it.
I think that is huge. I think for anyone, that any business model, you got to find mentors. And I think one of the biggest challenges too is understanding the difference between where most mentors won't mentor you because you become competition. And
Mhm.
essentially what's great of what I'm seeing with you is that you found something where you're getting mentorship where you're not necessarily, competition doesn't matter,
That's right.
right? And so that's an exciting place for someone to be.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's talk about decision making, Wayne, because a lot of the viewers that we have here, they want to be an entrepreneur. They're thinking about 9 to 5, and with this whole pandemic thing, you're like, man, like, how do I make decisions, right? How do I make a decision quickly? And sometimes decisions can actually a lack of a decision could also be a decision, right?
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: when you prioritize, or when you work your 24 hours in a day, how do you prioritize your daily life? Like, how do you know what to prioritize?
Great question. I learned that successful people make decisions quickly, but they change slowly. And
Mm.
the reason is simple. Successful people already have a vision of their life and where they're headed. And for most people, indecision hits them when they don't have vision, where they lack vision, because they don't know which decision to make because they have no idea where they're headed.
Mm.
But it's actually easy for me to make decisions because I can quickly determine whether or not that decision is in alignment with where I'm going.
Mm.
Right. And I think that's really where I want to take a step back to kind of share with people that, decision making gets easier when you know exactly where you're going. Right. And then you don't have to decide on whether or not I should do a particular thing. Well, is it in alignment with where you're headed? Make the decision.
Mm.
If you don't have that vision, then you can see why it's really hard for somebody to make decisions, because they don't know if it's in alignment, because they don't know what they're supposed to be in alignment with.
Mm. There's no
Right.
clarity
So I
on.
think Yes. So I think it requires we take more time to just establish first and foremost, what do I want?
Hmm.
And where do I see myself going? And then this next fork in the road that I come up to, if I already know where I'm headed, then I know which road to take because it's going to be in alignment with that vision.
That
So
vision.
that's why it gets easier for me. I just know what I want.
And let me ask you, how long did it take for you to get there?
I wouldn't in terms of the ability to make decisions like that.
Well, yeah, the ability to, because one of the things that when you were sharing that is, even looking in thyself, right? Because when you become a father, a parent, things change, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Would you say that at this stage of your life, right? When did you feel like, hey, let's say 5 years ago you made the decision and now you know exactly where you want to go? Like, did it happen right away, or was it something that you built up and
Yeah.
or what would you say to that?
Sure, it does change, right? And obviously, it changes with the seasons of our life too, right?
Mhm.
The way I thought in my early 20s is completely different now than in my early 40s, right? When you're in your 20s, all you can think about is the Lamborghini. Now you think about how do I make sure I got retirement,
Yeah.
right? So it's just different. But in each season, kind of refers back to the previous question. You have mentors that help you along that way,
Mm.
right? You have. I always like to tell somebody in their 20s, you should have mentors that are twice your age
Mm.
because you now get to live like a 40 or 50-year-old while being in your 20s because
Mm.
now you get to learn the level of thinking that they already have, and so they can help you with that vision before you ever even get there,
Wow.
right? And so for me, I learned it early because all of my mentors throughout my life have always been older than me and much older than me, so it's really helped me not only grow up fast but really start to take a step back and understand that I have to learn how to have a vision for my life at 60 when I'm 25,
Mm.
rather than, YOLO and just do whatever I got to do at 25. That's just a backwards way of thinking. I always used to tell people in my 20s, I'd rather work hard in my 20s and play later than play in my 20s and have to work forever.
Mm.
Right. And so that's always been my mindset because all of my mentors in my 20s were all in their 40s and 50s.
Wow.
You see, so I think it goes hand in hand with the previous question, the mentorship part again.
Yeah. And then that's where you adopted the philosophies of those mentors to help you get a clearer picture on making those decisions that you need to achieve those goals.
Right.
That's,
Exactly.
that's awesome. Let's talk about okay, how about this? What about a person that is, whatever business venture they're trying to get involved with, right? Because some people are saying, well, Brad, I want to be an entrepreneur, I want to be a restaurant owner, I want to do this. I think this is the next big thing. What would you say about timing? Like when someone's looking at an opportunity, what would you say in regards to timing of the person and timing of the opportunity? Like
Okay.
when would they connect? How would you know they would be a good decision to
Great question. It's not always very easy to see,
make? Mm.
but there are key indicators you're looking for, right? The first, we talked already in length about mentorship. You should always base any opportunity on who would I be learning from,
Mm.
right? Because that matters. And I remember a mentor once told me, he says, and he was very successful in his 50s at that time. I was like 24 at the time. And he said, you shouldn't listen to yourself too much. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you're broke. Right? So you need to borrow my brain to get you where you need to go. And so what he helped me understand was if I'm trying to go into a new business model or new endeavor on my own, if all I have is me that I'm bringing to the table, that's not a winning formula,
Mm.
right? Because I don't have any roadmap to follow. I'm literally going to go into a empty minefield and there's no footprints,
Mm.
right? And so the first thing I have to judge any opportunity on is who am I going to be learning from, and is there someone I can learn from,
Mm.
right? So that's always the first thing for me is our mentorship. That's a very key thing. The second, when it comes to timing of business, well, is what we're looking to get accomplished in the community or with a product or service, is it a marketable idea that has the proper timing?
Mm.
If a new IT or what do you call that, cell phone company were to come out and say, I want to come out with a new smartphone. Well, timing it matters,
Yeah.
right? When you've got people like Samsung and Apple dominating, forget it. You don't have a chance,
Yeah.
right? Versus if they were talking around 2001, 2002 about a smartphone idea, now we're talking timing is right, right? And so I think we have to look at, hey, I want to start a barber shop. Okay, well that's been done before.
Okay.
What are you going to do that's different, right?
Uh-huh.
And don't market to guys like me and Brent. See, in other words, you got to know the timing. You got to know the timing that your marketable idea is right. But first and foremost, in my opinion, check in with who you're going to be learning from. That's doing the thing that you're looking to do.
Mm,
Right.
that is, I'm like taking notes. Like you're not even seeing. I'm like, oh, I got to rewatch this interview. This is some nuggets here. Wayne, let's talk about this is my favorite topic to always talk about, right? It's failure, right? Teaching moments, failures. With someone that is, is considering being an entrepreneur, what should they know about failure, and is it required for someone to be successful in business?
Yeah, yes and yes. Failure, yes, is required. And I always like to say it this way: failure is like a ingredient within a successful recipe,
Mm,
right? See, you can't bake a good tasting cake without sugar. You
yeah.
just can't do it. I mean, I'm sure there's some keto options these days, right? but think of it this way, right? The things that we grew up on, right? They have this particular recipe that's required to make them perfect.
Yeah.
But if you take one of those ingredients out, like eggs or something, it ain't gonna come together.
Right.
Failure is the same way, right?
Mm,
You have to actually go into any endeavor expecting it to happen.
mm,
Because then when you expect it to be a part of the process, it doesn't blindside you. It doesn't take you off your game. It doesn't, you can literally take a step back and say, oh, my mentor said that was going to happen.
mm.
And so now you say, I tell people, you got to learn to eat failure for breakfast, right? Because it's part of it, right? And if you're kidding yourself, if you think that you're going to have this easy breezy way to success or to the mountaintop without having a little bit of setback and failure along the way, because that's not how it works,
Mm,
right? I have this, you guys can't see it on screen, but I have a poster on my wall right in front of me, and it says the best view comes from the hardest climb, right?
mm.
And it's just a person sitting at the top of this mountain peak overlooking the mountain range.
Wow.
And you can't tell me that that's not true. The best views are always at the top, but it's always the hardest climb to get to those best
Yeah.
views.
Yeah.
There's a reason people die going to Everest, right? But it's the most beautiful view on the planet.
Yeah.
You see, and so that's the thing, is if we embrace failure as something that's a part of our process and our growth, rather than something that we need to avoid, then that's going to put us in a better position to be a successful entrepreneur. It's not something you run away from. It's actually something you run towards, because it's a part of something you have to go through to get to where you need to go.
Wow.
So that's what it is for me.
Wayne, like listening to you, I'm like, man, dude, this guy, you've read a lot of books, you've learned a lot, you've gone through a lot of failures and experiences. I think this is, even with all the interviews are always great. It's always exciting to see, looking at the Wayne that's like 20 years ago. I wonder who he was, to see him and everything like that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you now, with the income that you're making, right, and that you're going to make, as I see your numbers, growing in the company here. How's your mindset changed from someone that was making a six-figure comfortable income to now where your vision's been stretched? Like, how has that changed your lifestyle mentality and your mindset mentality?
The biggest thing for me as of late, because it's really started compounding and growing in the last 12 months or so, but the biggest thing for me is it's almost like my ceiling of self-limiting beliefs is starting to increase.
Mm,
I'm starting to see that I actually am worthy of more, or I can actually scale to new heights. And sometimes that's more inner work than it is outer business building, right?
yes.
Is believing that you're actually worthy of more,
Mm,
right? And when you start developing yourself in that way, that you believe that, hey, wait a minute, that mountaintop isn't as far as I thought. I just got to take a few more steps and keep going. Then you start realizing, okay, not only can I, achieve more, but I can bring more people with me because my belief has been stretched.
mm,
See, I think, you don't get to the multiple six figures and seven figures and beyond and eight figures in some cases unless you're able to influence others to go to their new heights.
yeah.
Right. But you don't do that with your fancy car and your bank account. You do that with your example of
Mm,
how you actually learned how to bandage your knees up off of those sharp rocks.
wow.
Right. And that's I think what really has really shifted for me is, hey, wait a minute, I know that we're growing, but how many more people can we get to the same level?
Mm,
And so your mindset, it starts to expand, and then it makes sense. As my mind is expanding, so is my income.
wow.
Right. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm finding for myself is, wait a minute, our income started going up when we started involving more people into their growth.
Mm. Let me piggyback off of that too, Wayne, because something was popping in my mind here. Would you say that it's very similar? Someone once shared with me saying you first have to get past the survival stage so that you can get to the thriving stage, right? Would you agree that as time had progressed for you, as you were taking care of like, surviving for yourself and your family, and this new fulfillment of passion came into like really bringing people with you? Would you say that's something that you're experiencing currently today?
Yep, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. You see, you know, I'm a person of faith, and I don't believe that God will give you someone else as your responsibility until you've handled your own responsibilities of growing.
Yeah.
And you have to grow your leadership capacity in order to lead others, right?
Mm,
No one's going to follow somebody who doesn't have their stuff together when it comes to their mindset.
yeah.
And that's been the biggest thing. The survival mode, if you will, that first year, first couple of years in business, is all about you working on you,
Mm,
and getting to the points where, how many books have you read in that time period? How much have you done of self work to be ready to lead others?
yeah.
When, I mean, I don't know if I'd be able to lead a Brent Paiste if I was brand new as an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
because of his mindset compared to where mine is.
Yeah.
Right. And I wouldn't draw you in. I wouldn't attract you, because we all know that you attract who you are.
Right.
And so if I want to attract better leaders in my community, guess what? I've got to be that first.
Yeah.
I've got to start putting more energy into, how do I become what I need to be, live into my potential, so I
Mm.
can start drawing in better people.
I love that, man. I'm like I'm like, this is dropping bombs here, Wayne. I love that. Let's talk about, you kind of talked about it a little bit. When you look at the man in the mirror today,
Yeah.
right? And how has that relationship with yourself changed? Like, what are some of the things that you probably talk to yourself about, or your mentor has said, don't listen to yourself, you're broke, right? Like, what would you say that you have been able to talk to yourself more, your relationship with yourself? How has that changed during this journey?
It's changed quite a bit in that, you know, I, when you start to grow in your life, and not just in business, but in your life, you start to realize that you've grown from a certain place that you once were, but you also know that you're capable of even more,
Mm,
because you've seen it happen. We don't have to look too far to realize that, hey, wait a minute, we've already come a long way. Let's not have anxiety over what hasn't happened yet. Let's look at where we've been to show that, hey, we have a little bit of resolve. We've shown that we,
mm,
we have the ability to learn and grow. We have the ability to learn from our mistakes. And when I talk to myself now, it's like, man, I'm not where I want to be yet,
yeah.
right? But I'm sure glad I'm not where I used to be, and I know that with the right disciplines that I've established over the years, I can go to even greater heights. But again, it's not because I have this arrogant mindset that tells me that I can do anything. No, it's more, I see what I've gone through and what I've pushed through. And because I know failure is a part of the process, it's humbling too.
Mm,
It makes me feel like, you know, yeah, you're not perfect, man. you're,
yeah.
you're not anywhere close to where you need to be. But as long as I keep the mindset and the commitment to myself that I can constantly improve, it keeps me in a space of humility. I've never arrived. And like we've heard the old cliche, right? The problem with plucking a tomato from the vine is that eventually it begins to die.
Mm,
And so we have to make sure that we stay connected. We have to stay connected to the vine of mentorship and on people that have gone before us, so that way we keep the proper perspective of, you've never arrived,
mm,
right? And so that's why I always tell myself, yeah, I haven't arrived yet. When I first hit another milestone in our business, the first thing I reached out to, or I did, was I reached out to my mentor and said, hey, I've only got 19 more diamonds to catch up to you. Right? So and that was really for me,
yeah.
to remind myself that you haven't done anything yet,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You have so much more growth to happen,
Yeah.
and so that's my relationship with myself now, is not telling myself that I'm anything special, but that I've been blessed with an opportunity to become more special,
Wow.
and just staying committed to that.
Yeah, when you're saying that, a lot of what I'm seeing, Wayne, and for a lot of the leaders, right, is that attitude of gratitude, right? And it's like seeing the fact that we are that perspective of other countries, like people who are in third world countries and don't have the same level of opportunity. The amount of gratitude that I'm seeing from a lot of these successful entrepreneurs is because they're grateful for the possibility to be more, to give more, to really, really own the gifts that they have, and to run with it, right? And once people tap into that, to realizing that like they've actually just being here, they have such a blessing, right? Just doing that, then you show your gratitude by doing the work. And I love seeing that. I think many of you entrepreneurs that, or even people who are considering being an entrepreneur, you have to realize that, a lot of being an entrepreneur is not just about money. It's also a lot about self discovery. And what I've
Yeah.
learned in business and dealing with a lot of individuals is um, business just exposes you. It shouldn't change you. It really just exposes who you are as a person, how you're evolving, how you're growing. So if you're not willing to face yourself in the mirror and accept the flaws and the challenges, you got to ask yourself and see if this is really what you want. And I think, Wayne, that's a great way of explaining that. Let's go to the last question here, Wayne. And I always love sharing. I love sharing this because a lot of people, they technically don't look back. They look back kind of like a rear view mirror, right? They try to look at it and learn from it, but never go there. When you look back, let's say 10, 20 years from now, you're back in your 20s, right? Your son is in his 20s, I'm assuming, right? And what would you
My
tell?
daughter.
Oh, your daughter is okay. Your daughter is in her 20s. So what would you tell her as someone that's a young entrepreneur that decides to say, hey, you know what, entrepreneurship is for me, and I want to be an entrepreneur? Like, if you could tell your younger self or someone that's 20 years younger than you, what is probably two key things that you would want to leave them with, kind of as what your dad and your grandfather left you with? What
Yeah.
would you leave with them?
The first would be keep the attitude of gratitude. Right,
Mm,
you just mentioned it, right? Because it gives you the proper perspective, right? You if you keep a sense of gratitude, there's never a swelling of the head, they call it,
mm,
right? Because you're always grateful for what you've been given, and you acknowledge the blessing that you've received. That's the first thing, right? I
mm,
wish I can go back and be a little more grateful for what I had along the way, right? And the second is stay hungry,
mm.
right? Is keep this energy, this fire inside you that says that, and I don't mean for acquisition of material things. I mean for the hunger to learn, the hunger to grow, the hunger to take your life to another level, because we're only passing through this life once. And how do we make the biggest impact on the most amount of people? Well, that's going to require a certain fire.
Mm,
You look at all the most influential people of our history, or in history, I should say, they all had a fire for something great, right? And it wasn't necessarily because of the amount of years that they had that fire,
mhm,
right? Some of them, unfortunately, their lives were cut short, but because of what they did in that small amount of years with fire, it changed the world.
mm.
And so I think, having an attitude of gratitude, and because that also brings humility with it,
Right.
and having a fire of just staying hungry for growth.
Mm,
I think those two would be the key things I would give to anybody in their 20s,
mm,
because that's usually what gets misplaced, especially when success can happen in your 20s.
mm.
If success happens in your 20s, gratitude tends to start taking a hit,
Right.
right? And ego starts to creep up. And then, or complacency.
Mm.
Complacency is what kills and puts out that fire.
Wow.
So I think that's what I would give advice to.
That's awesome. Well, Wayne, thank you so much, man. We've gone through these questions. You've left some amazing nuggets and bombs. One thing I gotta share and ask Wayne is, like, as people are going through this pandemic, right, and are more fearful than ever, what would you say to them in a time like this? Is it really a bad time to be in business? What would you say going into 2021? What could be a message for anybody that is hearing your interview today?
The first is don't listen to yourself,
Mm,
right? See, our natural inclination is comfort. Our natural inclination is fear. So we actually have to fight against that, by I'd say in some ways tricking our minds into thinking things are better than they actually are,
mm.
by simple affirmations. Because Jim Rohn once said, if you don't want it in your life, then why say it?
Wow.
Right? If you don't want, business is bad right now. If you don't want that in your life, why say it?
Mm,
Because you're hearing what you're saying to yourself,
yeah.
right? And the second is get yourself around mentors that believe more about where you can go than you believe, right? Mentorship, so much of my life is geared around that. Is who do you listen to? Who do you tap into that can actually pour life into you and pour hope into you,
Wow.
rather than what media can do, and rather than what social media is doing, all the different negative environments that we have around us? We live in a negative world.
Yeah.
So we actually have to fight against that negativity by being on the offense to seek out positive.
Wow.
Right. I always say that, social media has two spectrums, the really negative and the really positive, and everything in between people just scroll past.
Mm,
Right. But people are drawn to those two sides of the spectrum. And so you have a choice, right? You have a choice to either be more kind of geared towards the negative side of things or the ultra positive side of things.
mm.
And what you decide to pour your mind into is the direction that your life's going to go. And that's the only thing that I can figure is the reason why we're scaling during a pandemic is because we don't pour into the negative spectrum.
Wow.
We don't. And it
Yeah.
has absolutely no bearing on what happens around us because life's going to happen regardless. Bad stuff's going to happen regardless, but the mindset we bring to it may not affect the four walls of our own home the same way.
Mm.
So I think that's kind of how I view it, and I think it's really important. You have to put on an armor every day to keep negative forces away.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you, Wayne. Guys, that is with Mr. Wayne Meadows here. I appreciate you guys. Any of you watching this, if you want to go ahead and find Wayne, I'm pretty sure you can find him on Facebook, Instagram. If you need to find him, we'll have this posted as well, so you guys can get a link to getting in contact with him. But Wayne, thank you so much, brother. I look forward to seeing more of your growth, more of your success. And once that multi-millions and that full abundance of income to change lives happens, we're gonna have those interviews along the way. Okay. So thank you again. We appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely, too, bro.
Awesome. Let me go ahead and stop the